of Spanish architecture, not French. And that is why foreign visitors to our city, especially if they're from Europe, will frequently remark that the French Quarter looks like an old Spanish town. You're absolutely right, it does. And that is why. So things continue on this way in New Orleans for several decades, until the little Corsican rises to power. Napoleon Bonaparte seizes control of France. Bonaparte wanted Louisiana and New Orleans back. In order to get it back, Napoleon goes to the King of Spain and he says, "Give it back." And they do. Now, officially traded for a small piece of Italy. In reality, it actually wasn't shaped down. Napoleon has Louisiana and New Orleans unofficially for officially for wheat for eternity, and he sells it to the Americans. $15 million. 3 cents an acre. It is in fact the largest land deal in all of human history. Because when I say Louisiana, I do not mean the state, I mean the watershed. Everything the Mississippi River drains goes west of the Mississippi River itself. That's the Louisiana Purchase. Thomas Jefferson was almost impeached because he was not given the authority from Congress to borrow the money necessary. And he did it anyway. Or rather, Jefferson's men do. Jefferson's men in Paris cross the English Channel, they go to the London banks because that's who has the money. They borrow what they need, they take it across the English Channel, they give it to Napoleon. Napoleon gives it to his men, and they cross the English Channel to the British manufacturers because they're the best in the world. They purchase huge amounts of gunpowder and muskets. They smuggle these back across the English Channel, they give them to Napoleon. Napoleon now gets more than one army, and then he attacks everyone. With British main weapons purchased with British money. The British were aware this was happening, it did make them very angry. And that all happened in the early years of the First World War. It's not World War I, but the Napoleonic War is the first time in human history that a war was fought on 3 continents. The British and their allies began fighting all over the planet. The Americans, we stayed out of it. Then I'll finish that second. Alright folks, off the port side of the boat, we're passing a series of very beautiful buildings. That is not a hotel. That is not a resort. That is a military base. It is the Jackson Barracks, headquarters of the Louisiana National Guard. Now, to my mind, to my eye, I think that is probably one of the more beautiful military bases that we have. Perhaps the second most beautiful, the first, of course, being the West Point. That is just my admittedly heavily biased opinion. Yours may differ. Century, America expanded the U.S. Navy, U.S. merchant fleets, and the U.S. whaling fleets so quickly. We built so many ships in such a short period of time that America, as a country, literally started running out of sailors. We have so many new ships, we don't have enough men all to do boats. Which is actually a real problem. To fix this problem, America turned to the best sailors in the world, the British. British sailors are offered higher wages, better living conditions, a more lenient punishment schedule, more rum. American citizenship, and of course the extra ancillary side benefit of not being at war with Napoleon. Many British sailors take this offer. They jump ship, metaphorically speaking, to American citizens and American sailors. The British are aware this was happening. It did make them very angry. They need these sailors to fight Napoleon. So they start taking them back by force. British ships start stopping American ships on the high seas, boarding them, forcing sailors off at gunpoint, telling them you are now part of His Majesty's Royal Navy, get to work. And that was the biggest single issue that led to war. The other issue that led to war was Canada. Now, if you are an American running this boat, you may want to pay attention to this next part of the story, because this story is taught in every single Canadian school. It is not taught in American schools, not most of them, but it absolutely did happen. The United States declares war on the British in 1812. That is why it's called the War of 1812. And if you're from America, I realize that you don't know anything about the War of 1812. Perhaps over. And here's why. The very first thing that we did, the only thing that we did, was invade Canada. Thomas Jefferson had years earlier said this would be a mere matter of marching. We could walk up into Canada, take over the entire country without even firing a shot. Those Canadians would surrender, become part of the United States. We'd be one big happy family. It did not work out that way. The U.S. invaded Canada in 1812, and we were defeated in almost every single battle. We were not defeated by the British Army because they didn't send anyone to help. We were not defeated by the Canadian Army because that did not exist. No. The American Army, now the most powerful the world has ever known, was repeatedly defeated by the citizen militias of Canada. Now their allies, the First Peoples, the Native Canadians, especially the Iroquois Confederation, they took their own muskets and they pushed the United States back into the United States. Now, because they were Canadian, I'm sure they've apologized while they were doing it. They definitely did it. In fact, they did it 3 times. But I'll finish that in a second. All right, folks, off the port side of the boat, we're passing the Domino Sugar Refinery. Believe it or not, that is one of the largest sugar refineries in the world. 1 million tons a year, 7.2 million pounds a day. And the way you get millions of pounds of sugar in that refinery every day is off of barges. That's what they're doing right now. That big blue clam bucket shovel can drop 10,000 pounds of sugar per scoop. If you do the math on that, 10,000 pounds of sugar per scoop works out to 17.7 million calories. That's a lot of sugar. Times, let's just wrap this up. 3 times the U.S. invaded Canada, 1812, again in 1830, and again in 1840. We were defeated and retreated 3 times. The war did not go well. The only bit of success we had is we were able to occupy a city called York for approximately 1 week. When the Canadians arrived, they forced us out. On the way out of the city, we burned it. Which now would be considered a war crime, but that is what we did. And the British got revenge for that one. By 1814, they had finally dealt with Napoleon. They put him on an island where he could never bother anybody ever again. Well, so they thought. They were wrong. The British then sent a massive fleet across the Atlantic Ocean. The very first thing they do when they get here is invade Washington, D.C. and burn it to the ground. This was revenge for the Americans burning York and several other Canadian cities. York is still there, by the way. It is now called